Alright guys, welcome back. So I've gone and filled the tank up, left it overnight, and I can safely say there's no leaks in the tank. I've gone out and bought some bits and bobs this morning to help with this project. Got the tank resealing kit and some wire brushes to attachments for the drill and grinder to clean the outside. First I thought I would pressure wash the outside. We'll see what happens. There's lots of gunk on here. Let's see what happens. Pretty impressive results. More rust on there than I thought. No, pretty good results. Probably should have degreased it first. Yeah, I might hit it with some degreaser. See what happens then. Alright, so a bit of degreasing. Tank back on the bench. Take this drain plug out. Now, a little tip. Thanks to Church House Classics, 1/2 inch spanner, 12mm spanner, slips in that groove. Then you can apply shifter and undo it. Works a treat. I couldn't get that out to save me. One Church House Classics video later on YouTube, Church House Classics, and good tip. Thanks for that, mate. Legend. So I'm going to take the cap off. I'm going to pull out my gas torch and see if I can remove this bash plate. Once that's done, I'll be able to start cleaning up this tank. So I've given it a little bit of a degrease, and then I've hit it with my gas torch. Obviously my blowtorch was out of gas. So I just got my chisel. It's only held on by a little bit of solder here and there. I managed to pop this off. That almost just fell off. So nothing was holding it. And it looks like there's just a little bit of solder holding it on around here. So I reckon I could just chip away some of the solder here. I reckon that's got it. I don't think there's much holding this on at all. This is just squashed on. It's no big deal. I don't think it does anything. It just holds the tank in place. I reckon I can pry that off. So there we go. There's the smash board. So let's have a look at the rust around here, around this tank. We can see the results of that capillary action that I was talking about. Liquid getting stuck in between two metal surfaces, just stays there. The only thing that can possibly happen is rust. So I think the only thing to do here, let's have a look here. Look at all the rust and shit in this corner here. Now this bash plate, that's got to be 3mm thick. This is probably 0.6 of a mil thick. But this will clean up really well. I'll hit this with a gentle wire brush, clean it up. Give it a bit of a going over. And we'll see how it comes up. Oh, well, I managed to get the gas in the blowtorch, and I managed to get all the solder off and all the little tabs of solder that were underneath it. Managed to heat all them off and just get it back to the bare tank. Gave it a pressure wash first, got all the solder off, and then I've got my wire brush on the grinder, and I've just got the most of the rust off. Giving it a wipe down. Tried not to go too heavy with the grinder. I'm just taking the bulk of the rust off. And then the idea is to use your tannic acid rust converter. Thanks to Vintage Restorations Australia. Find them on YouTube, very helpful. Once you get the bulk of the rust off, you can paint this rust converter over it. So I'm going to paint the rust converter over the entire tank, because the entire tank seems to be rusty. I think I'm flogging a dead horse here. I'll be very surprised if this tank will ever work. But I've come this far, so I might as well keep going. After a really light grind, and I stick the torch behind the tank over here, I can see the light. I can see pinholes coming in through the bottom of the tank. The product I'm using, which is Red Coat, that's going to seal the tank. That claims to be able to seal over the top of all different kinds of surfaces, including rust. And it claims to be able to fill up pinholes of up to 1.5 millimeters in diameter. And I'm going to be testing that theory out, because my pinholes have got to be 1.5 millimeters. There's about 8 of them, but I think what it does demonstrate is how thin the tank is. The pinholes are right underneath the bottom curve of the tank. And it's where the two bits of metal were pressing against each other and or accumulating mud and just being a downright pain in the ass, to be honest. So this rust converter is Galvamet products, and this contains tannic acid. The tannic acid is a natural product. Don't go drinking it though. And what it does, once you get the bulk of the rust off, what it does, it neutralises the steel so that no more rust forms in that area. You'll get a much better description on Vintage Restorations Australia. But that's basically what it does. So you layer it on. You only need to give it, apparently, I've never actually done it before, you only need to give it 1 coat. You can give it 2 coats, but it's expensive shit, and there's no point giving it more than 1 coat if you don't need to. And I don't even think this tank's going to work anyway, so there's no point fucking around. Now once this goes on, it starts turning blue, it starts turning black when the chemical reaction takes place. I think it's a chemical reaction. And this is already starting to turn purple now. So jolly good. I'm going to do the outside. I'm mainly doing it now. It's pretty cold outside. I'm concerned that the whole tank's going to get surface rust on it overnight if I leave it. So I'll give it a hefty coat of tannic acid tonight, rust converter, And then I'm going to do the same thing for inside the tank. I've got no research anywhere to suggest that you can use tannic acid inside the tank, but I'm going to do it anyway and see what happens. I'm just going to pour some in, see if I can paint it around somehow. Because the sealer that I'm using, which is called Red Coat, claims to be able to go over that sort of stuff. The bloke I bought it off actually said it should be able to go over rust converter. And he's from a radiator specialist. Does this sort of shit. And because I don't think much of this tank anyway, if it doesn't work, stiff shit. I actually have my concerns as well about the petrol tank. When I was heating off all the solder, I was really concerned that the actual petrol tank might be soldered together. I'm sort of hoping it's welded together so that I didn't negatively affect any of the joins with the heat. So you only need to put the rust converter over the rusty areas, but because this tank's so much rust in it, I'm just giving it a coat everywhere. Regardless, I think. You can see where all the solder lumps were in the bash plate. They've just got holes drilled in the bash plate. And it's like spot welded, but spot soldered to the bottom of the tank. So the plan from here, I'll just wait for it to dry, and then it's just a primer straight over the whole thing, and then a paint. Once that's done, I'll do a similar process to the inside of the tank with this red coat. Reckons it goes over rust, but I'm going to give it a bit of a clean anyway, over the rusty areas. Just maybe a bit of a sandpaper on a stick, just to rough up the rusty bits. Tip it out, rinse it out with some water, and then get the rust converter in there as well. I'll do a similar process. I'll just rinse around the rust converter, tip it out, wait for it to dry, and go from there. So we'll see what happens. Alrighty, so a couple hours later, it's almost dry. It's a bit thick in a few areas, and it's a really cold night, middle of winter here. So it's a little bit damp in some areas, but close enough. What I'm thinking of doing is I'm thinking of de-rusting the inside, cleaning up some of the rust, rinsing it out a bit, drying the inside, and putting some tannic acid in there, some rust converter. So, a few methods of etching away the rust in the middle of the tank, inside the tank. We could drop a chain in there and shake it around a bit, and then pull the chain out. Or we could put ball bearings in there or something like that. Could put some tech screws in there. Just not sure how well they're going to come out. Soon find out, I suppose. So your classic tech screw, it's got your 5/16, 8mm head, your little rubber neo, and it's got your type 17 point. So it's a timber screw. It's about I think it's an 8 gauge. but it's got your little self-tapping slit in it, just for starting the thread out, starting the thread cutting into your timber. Class 3 screw, so it's got your gold coating on it, so you can use this outside. That's approved, the roof plumbing world. Fucking hurt my finger. Jesus. Smashed my finger on a bit of wood. Well, it didn't look like it was really flaky rust anyway. And I've been shaking that around for a while. Oh, fucking hell. That was a bit of a challenge. I'm just going to rinse it out with water. So I've just rinsed the tank out. Just tried cleaning up the rough rust from the inside. Doesn't have to be great. Just needs all the flaky bits off. Rinse all the shit out, and quite a bit of shit came out just with half a dozen cupfuls of water. And before I can put the tannic acid in there, the rust converter, I've just got to get most of the water out. And most of the water is coming out the pinholes, which is in the bottom of the tank there. I'm just speeding the process up, just blowing the water out. A bit of air, a bit of wind, helps dry anything, doesn't it? A bit of my old favourite, threaded rod. all thread, whatever you want to call it. One of my other favourites, a bit of duct tape. I once used some duct tape on some duct work to repair some ducted heating. That wouldn't get used to repair ductwork all that often. That's it for the rust inside the tank. There's not much in there at all. Alright, I might really piss the missus off and whack this inside the house near the wood heater. It can dry overnight and I'll give it a couple of coats of paint in the morning. Well, a coat of primer that is anyway. So that's the plan for tonight. That's job done. We'll see how we go. So the plan from here is to let that dry 100%. Drying is the key when you're applying red coat. So the most important thing when you're pouring this inside the tank is the tank has to be 110% dry. The recommendation is you let it dry for days. So I'll stick it in front of the wood heater and we'll see how we go.